Good day, shalom, and welcome again to another edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Adras, and we thank you for your time and for joining us today on today's show. One of the things that we are absolutely aware of is the power of stories that reflect the human condition and all of our own personal journeys. And with that in mind, we are pleased to welcome to today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, Matt Goldberg, a resident here of beautiful southern New Jersey, who has undertaken a very, very unique project that we asked him to come on and talk to us about because it involves stories. It involves collecting stories and putting them all together, I think especially meaningful as a result as we hopefully emerge out of this pandemic. So, Matt, welcome to Seekers of Meaning. It's nice to see you. I hope the family is well, and I hope you're well, too. Ring of Kindness is the name of this collection of stories. I think the obvious question is, why? What brought you to do this?
First of all, thank you, and shalom, Rabbi. My love to you and your family.
Thank you.
What brought me to do it, I guess early on during the pandemic, which you referenced, it occurred to me that acts of kindness and connectivity are spreading virally, just as the then term coronavirus was. And there were many beautiful acts of such kindness, consideration, generosity, empathy. And in my own little way, I wanted to be an agent to spread kindness to the world via our stories of kindness. And it was just an idea, nothing much more. An incident happened to me. The title of the book is from when I had lost my wedding ring and couldn't find anywhere for a few weeks. And it just so happened I was taking a walk with my wife and son around what we call the duck pond and saw a sign posted, ring found. And it was more a story of excellent timing and good fortune, but it was found by people who live maybe a mile and a half away, who I wouldn't have met otherwise. And they were just the kindest, most, warm-hearted people that I met through them. And I thought it was a story just as much of fortuitous, I won't say fortuitous fortune. That's terrible writing and speaking. But it was good luck, but it was also the kindness of the people who were as happy as I was to reunite me with my ring. And I posted it just on a Facebook, What's Up on Cherry Hill, with a little tagline, good people really do abound in this town. And a few people who know that I previously published 6 books and worked with other titles as well said, well, maybe that would be a good theme for a book. And the book didn't really take off in earnest till around March of this year, where I really was asking people, have you been the recipient of acts of kindness? And I later defined it as not necessarily from strangers, as it was in my little story, but not family members, not significant others, or people we were close friends with at the time. That's the dynamic I wanted for the book, to really illustrate how connected we really are. And at this point, Rabbi, I have about 80 such stories that are going to be ready for publication. I'm hoping by the end of 2022, and a meaningful, uplifting book.
So you write in the beginning, I think in your introduction, the idea of these stories reflect the concept of shared humanity, compassion, empathy, and as well as kindness. The Hebrew word that sort of like encompasses this is chesed, which we usually translate as kindness or deeds of loving kindness. But I think if you read through the stories, and there's hundreds and dozens, I don't know, hundreds, but there's dozens of stories from all over the place. It's not just a quote Jewish book, but you have, this stories from people from Mexico and
Yes.
all kinds of cultures, et cetera, et cetera. You get that sense that there is this thread of chesed that runs. So I guess two questions that
Mm-hmm.
pop up immediately. Number one, is this random? Or if you are so theologically inclined, is there a mysterious hand of God that is working here? And two, in your opinion, in your Matt's opinion, is there like a genetic proclivity in each one of us to do these acts of kindness?
All great questions. So the first two questions, I'm tempted to say yes and yes. I don't know that all the acts were completely random, but in my case, and I'd say of the 80 stories, there might be 75 better ones than my own story about the missing ring. It was random that I met those very kind people on that day, and they truly wanted to be of help with someone. They had the empathy to know that someone was really missing something very valuable, and they would do their part to restore it to their owner. I don't know the reason but perhaps some people are more inclined to deliver words of kindness and empathy or deliver acts of kindness. I don't know why that is. I think that's across any barriers that we put among ourselves. But I'm not really, it's certainly very consistent with Jewish teachings and acts of love and kindness. Where it stems from, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. One of the takeaways, if I may, from the book is often just as beauty is in the eye of the beholder, I think kindness is in the eyes of the recipient. So there's so many different examples in the book of what is defined by kindness. Is it
Right.
generosity? Is it self-sacrifice? Is it truly putting ourselves in another person's place?
It also can be, as every clergy person and many people who have been involved in issues with family and personal issues, sometimes that act of kindness can be just presence.
Mm-hmm.
Just being with another person, just being in a room, being there without saying anything, without doing anything, just being. And I think
Yes.
sometimes we're so conditioned that we have to say something or do something. But a lot of times it's just, hey, thanks for just being here. I really appreciate it. Sitting in silence sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a story, I would say, within that dynamic from a high school student. I had 3 wonderful personal narratives, and these are all true stories in the book.
Right.
I can't vet each one, but they are. And a wonderful story, I believe she was a high school sophomore at the time who really recognized that power of just someone being there when she felt so alone. I won't do complete justice to it. Her words were wonderful, but just alone in a crowd, which is a very lovely feeling. And just the comfort, the reassuring pat on the back or on the shoulder, just being with her. Almost a little hineni moment. Here I am. I'm at your service. I'm here to help you and guide you through this. And just that intuitive connection, I found that story very, very touching.
Yeah, remind me. There's another story by I think a Sanchez woman, Liz.
Yes, Luz Sanchez, who grew up in Mexico. Yes,
talks about that these acts of kindness don't have to be overwhelming, and they can be small. Just a little.
Yes,
just a little action, a little presence, a little. I understand what you're going through. I am here just in case. Sometimes even now, as you know, and as many of you know who are on the call with us, a phone call, a reaching out and say, hi, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. How you doing? How you doing?
Yeah, correct, Rabbi. A lot of this, when I was first explaining this book and when it was slowly building and I wasn't sure that it would be a slam dunk to even have enough compelling stories to be published. So when I trust asked, well, what about these stories? They're not really that momentous. And my thought was, Well, not all of these will make headlines in the newspaper. I guess we still have newspapers in some form, but they're feature stories. And these are acts that, for the most part, there's some that are heroic, not really everyday acts of kindness, the being there, I'm here for you. They go beyond that in that sense. Maybe they're more newsworthy, but the others are replicable acts. We could all learn from these examples. I think they're contagious. They create a ripple of, or ripples of humanity.
Right.
And that's, I would say, a lot of them of that ilk. But there are some stories in the book that are more, wow, that really happened to you. Someone actually sacrificed to do that for you out of just a sense of connectivity, of human empathy. So I think they run the gamut.
You make this linkage in one of the quotes that chapters are divided, and there's some quotes at the beginning of each chapter. So one of the things that struck me, because it does also links to a Jewish concept of wisdom, is this quote from Aesop: "Kindness is more important than wisdom, and the recognition of this is the beginning of wisdom." Talk to me about, first of all, that's a great quote. And this linkage of chesed and chokhmah, in many ways, kindness and wisdom. Unpack that for me. How do you understand that?
Yeah. And in terms of the book, my little conceit, if you will, was dividing, let's say there are about 80 stories roughly in the book, and divided them into different acts. So playing off that like it's a theater production. And yes, for Act 2, as it were, that was the quote that you read, Rabbi, from Aesop.
Right.
And yeah, I think, as I picture it, kindness really isn't an ostentatious act. We're not, I think it starts at the basic level again with human empathy and being wise to react to people, in the way that we would want to be treated, but not to call attention to ourselves that we're doing anything so wise or so great. It should be easy for us to go out of our way for others, and having the wisdom to know what to say and what to do, and treating others with full dignity in the process. So I might be reading more into that one quote by Aesop than is there, but I think that's all part of the wisdom, knowing when to act and treating people with full respect and dignity in the process.
The reason why I wanted to mention that, because in the work that we do with Jewish Sacred Aging, we put a lot of stock in life experience, and you can have we all probably know people who have significant numbers of academic degrees, lots of initials after their name, but they lack that sense of empathy and chesed. They may be brilliant, but there's something else that's not there, and the reverse being true as well. Yeah. So that idea of wisdom, when we get older, what does it really mean to be wise? Has a lot to do with exactly the stories that you're writing about in the book. It's this underscore of the power of relationships cemented or brought together by these acts of chesed. The book is going to be available, as you said, hopefully by the end of this calendar year. Is it going to be a print book? Is it electronic? How are people going to be able to get a hold of this?
Thanks for asking, Rabbi. Thank you very much. Both print edition and also a Kindle type edition, so it could be read digitally as well. And I expect it will be, I'm hoping where I can to reach out and touch people and make presentations along with the contributing authors of the book. I have a few of my own stories, but this would not be a book. It would be a pamphlet if it were just my 3 stories with a few other writings. So I'm greatly indebted to those who contribute the stories. So I'm hoping to be able to place it in care centers, perhaps in schools, but day to day, mostly via Amazon and I guess, the Kindle version as well. And in the remaining bookstores, I'm hoping that different bookstores will carry it.
So you mentioned something that I think is that I want to explore with you, because I think there's some great potential here. Once the book is available, and you talk about care centers, if somebody is sitting in an assisted living facility or a memory care unit and say, this is something that not only we could put out, but maybe bring Mr. Goldberg in to have a conversation with families. How would they get in touch with you? Are you going to do you want to give out any contact information, or will it be contained within the book if somebody wants to get a hold of you?
It will, but I would love to be able to get that out. And again, thank you. I would be honored to speak to people and families. My email address is Matt, M-A-T-T, at MatthewJGoldberg.com. So M-A-T-T at MatthewJGoldberg.com. And my website is MatthewJGoldberg.com. So I hope in the meantime to start setting up the infrastructure, if you will, for some public appearances, and hopefully for people who would like to grab a copy for themselves or for people that they know. I truly think that it will be an uplifting, somewhat, life-affirming book. At least that's my goal.
It really is. I can see ringsofkindness.com as a website unto itself to just advertise the book. What was the influence of your father, Matt, on this book?
Yeah. I think in many ways, there's so many things. I miss my dad dearly, of blessed memory, Robert Joseph Goldberg. Just a kind, unassuming guy, a good citizen, a lifelong learner. I think when we talk about wisdom, he would never show off at how much he knew. But around the house, you would ask him for help on your homework or just a fact, and he would give you a long answer, sometimes too long for my short attention span, but I became to appreciate more long. He just loved learning. He loved, in his quiet way, being the exemplar of being a good neighbor, of doing a favor, again, not ostentatiously, but being of service to others. And I just think, I think of his gentle wisdom, if you will, in the sense of Aesop's quote, and kind of knowing the right things to say, making people comfortable in his presence. So I was so fortunate to have him as a beautiful role model in my life. And I think he was essentially a very kind man. Parents
are the role models, aren't they?
Absolutely. If we're fortunate enough. And my mom as well, also of blessed memory, Sarah Paso Goldberg. So yeah, I think I had terrific role models in the home, along with my religious training and so many other forces. If, in fact, I'd be considered a kind person and in the ilk of my parents, I'd be very pleased with that.
There's been acts of kindness throughout history. People do that. There's stories and stories and stories and stories. Do you think the COVID pandemic just exacerbated the need? And I use the word need advisedly, because because of just the changes in societies, the trauma, the social trauma that we're still haven't dealt with, and the whole political mishigas, and the lack of civility, and the siloization of people and ideologies. Do you think that just said, wait a minute, we're just missing this? Do you think that has a lot to do with maybe what's going on here?
I think that extreme times, unfortunately, we see the extremities of the human experience, if you will. I do some public speaking, and you may not see evidence of it on this podcast this morning, but one of my speeches talked about how just little acts of kindness were spreading virally. We heard the stories, if we think all the way back to March of of 2020 and people hoarding items from the supermarket, grabbing all the TP and hand sanitizer. But at the same time, they were just beautiful stories. I was hoping to get this story in my book, from the principals, but a man who knocked on the outside of the emergency room. I believe it was in central New Jersey. I don't remember the town. He couldn't come inside. And the medical team saved his wife's life. And he wanted to show his gratitude towards everyone. And he held up a little sign, cardboard sign with marker to get the attention of one of, I believe, emergency room nurses. And that story luckily got legs and it was talked about, and it struck such a nerve, not only with me, but I'm sure with everyone who saw the story. There were so many people, hey, can I offer to pick up groceries for you? Whatever it might be, run errands. And that was happening. Some of it was reported, which was very nice and I think needed for all of us. During those times, I think we still need those stories. They nourish our souls in some way. And some were just simple acts, and no one wanted any compensation for it. They just wanted to show how they were connected to others and truly cared during just horrible, uncertain times. And and kindness is such a broad term. You and I, if we did word association, may give a slightly different answer. Maybe each author in my book might define it in a slightly different way, but I think we really respond to it. And unfortunately, sometimes it's against the backdrop of such vitriol and invective that's hurled at one another. And I'm hoping, this book and these stories, regardless of your political ideology or any other way that we choose to divide ourselves, it's almost a safe harbor of shared humanity and uplifting little stories from the somewhat commonplace, frankly, to the very heroic life-saving acts. And they happened, on our roadways. They even happen in sports arenas. They happen in the backdrop of the Holocaust. There's really a great variety of stories. And I'm so grateful that people shared a little bit of themselves in the process.
No, it's remarkable that you do have dozens and dozens and dozens of stories from people from all over, different walks of life, et cetera, et cetera. And, there is this belief in Midrash and our tradition that you do the mitzvah. It's not only benefiting the person who's receiving the mitzvah, but really it redounds more to the person who's doing the mitzvah. And really your stories really reinforce that. I'm very happy. I mean, you alluded to, you opened the door I'm going to walk in here now about sports. And I've been known to dabble in sports and especially baseball. And you do have some baseball stories, which I was very pleased. And this woman, Susan Weirtz, I probably maybe mispronouncing.
I believe that is correct, Rabbi. Yes.
Oh, thanks. But she tells this wonderful story of, again, her and I think it's her father and out on the West Coast and they were going to baseball stadiums, et cetera. She's a veteran and was rewarded for that and this little act of kindness. But embedded in that is also this, the continuing unraveling, or not unraveling, a bad word, of family dynamics and family secrets and the idea of part of that acts of kindness can sometimes be learning more and more about a parent or things that they didn't want to talk about, or it was just a lovely vignette.
Yeah.
That she wrote about. And it's part of that section, right?
And thank you. And on Suzanne's behalf, thank you. I thought she told the story wonderfully. There are sometimes these other undercurrents, and she, not a baseball fan in particular, as the story begins, or the backstory to it. And keep in mind, most of these stories are 1,000 words or less. So when the authors could be more, I won't say economical, but really, give a sense of the backstory without overburdening it, but really they're so relatable and not always close. And she wanted to help fulfill one of her father's, I don't know if he termed it as a bucket list item, but visiting various ballparks, and they bonded as a result. And they were just treated so wonderfully as he was a veteran. And I believe it was at Angel Stadium.
Right, in LA. It was in LA.
Yeah. And as a baseball fan, they even called, I believe, Shohei Ohtani's first home run. So, so it's a great baseball story, but a father and daughter story, and the story of the kindness of those who were strangers but had that bond and the respect that they showed him as a veteran. And it touched upon a few different themes very nicely, I thought.
So before we run out of time, I'll just want to end this. And again, we're talking with Matt Goldberg, who's collecting this series of stories around Chesed. The book is going to be called Rings of Kindness. Look for it towards the end of this year, the calendar 2022. Nice, easy ending question,
Okay.
Matt. What have you learned from all this?
Yeah, great question. And thanks so much for the opportunity to speak with you, Rabbi, and your audience. I've learned that kindness is contagious. Kindness is something that stays with us. Some of the stories was a man in his 70s remembering his, I want to say, first grade teacher who presented him with a book. He grew up in a home without books, and he thought that he wasn't bright. He happens to be a brilliant writer. He's become a good friend and a very good soul, and that just unlocked potential in him. I think I've learned that little acts of kindness can have momentous effects within our lives. Towards the book, also, I think that being kind, not to be, I don't know the word there, but it is kind of cool again. We really need it. We seek it out. A recent story that I just got, maybe after I sent you my working manuscript, is, in my opinion, being kind is being cool. And that sounds so trite, but I think it is. And I mean, it can't just be a fashion. It's something that it helps us. So I think people enjoy telling their stories, and I've been the beneficiary of that and able to put the list together. Kindness can be defined in so many different ways, and kindness begets more kindness, and it's good for the soul, at least as good for the soul of the giver as it is for the recipient.
Matt Goldberg, best of luck with Rings of Kindness, and I hope you get picked up, in a variety of different healthcare facilities, and talk to people about this. I think it's a very, very lovely lesson, not only for adults, but really for teens, and kids. And who knows, maybe Netflix will pick this up and have all these 80s stories. Could be a mini series on Netflix. They do it about love and everything else. Why not have a mini series on kindness?
Why not?
As they say in the Torah, couldn't hurt.
It cannot. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Matt,
I appreciate
thank you very much. Just say hello to your family for me, and just stay healthy and stay safe. And we'll see you on Route 70, probably, if not someplace else.
Sounds good. And to you, Rabbi, and to your family. Thank you so much.
To all of you, again, thank you very, very much for joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the TV show and podcast arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. If you'd like to help us continue our work here at Jewish Sacred Aging and support the podcast, Seekers of Meaning, and make a tax-free donation to help support this work, if you go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com, and click on the conveniently located donate button. And if you or your organization would like to become a sponsor or sponsor a series of these podcasts, again, just let me know. The rabbi address at jewishsacredaging.com. Seekers of Meaning is produced at the Broadcast Center of Lubetkin Media Companies, and a shout out to our producer, Steve Lubetkin. Until next time, until we meet again, this is your host, Rabbi Richard Adres. Thank you very, very much, everyone, for joining us today. In the meantime, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and as Matt keeps teaching us, be kind. Shalom, Todah.